Today, I am chatting with Naishadh, who is the founder of Your Career Down Under. It's a career coaching company that helps skilled migrants and international students and graduates find work in Australia. The reason I wanted to chat to him is because this dude is like a celebrity and a wizard of career development. Everyone I speak to, all the hundreds of career coaches and recruiters and international students and graduates know this person and they tell me to chat to him. So he's pretty much like the Eminem of career development. So today, hopefully, you can get some sort of nuggets from this conversation, and hopefully, he helps you get a job in Australia. All right, cool. Um, so, first question I wanted to ask you is, what are the unique problems that immigrants and international students face when they're coming into Australia regarding employment?
I think, Jaden, they face few challenges when it comes to employment or as such career. I think one of the thing is that if you talk about, I'll probably differentiate migrants and international graduates. We talk about migrants. Most of the migrants, when they arrive in Australia, they have not faced even a day of unemployment. And I say that anecdotally evidence, but I can absolutely say with confidence that they have not seen a day of unemployment, and they arrive here with the similar thinking that they have back in their country, that they will not be unemployed for a while because they have always been employed, right? So it takes, and then they arrive here, they suddenly find that people are not playing cricket. It's a cricket ground, but they are playing footy here, and they wonder, well, what am I going to do with this bat and the ball and the pad and helmet, because they are not playing with it. So they suddenly find themselves out of sync, right, with what is the market, what does the market want from them, what does the employer want from them, are dramatically different to their experiences back in the country. Second challenge is that inability to explain what they have done in their country and how it applies in the Australian context or not. So a lot of people, migrants come with very complex work history. They would have started as a junior engineer, rose to become a project manager and did procurement on the way, and they also did design engineering on the way. But it's very difficult for an Australian employer to understand that this complex work history, how it is applicable for them, how this person will be useful to me. And the migrants do not understand that. So what happens is they still talk about what they have done there, but they are unable to connect it to the business needs that the Australian employer has. So that there is a conflict there. And then on the top of that is the understanding of the Australian culture itself. I'm not talking about work culture, but just general understanding of the culture. And I think that's the biggest barrier. I can cite a lot of funny examples that even I have experienced. But, for example, it took 3 years for me to understand when people speak on the phone, for me to fully understand the language that they speak.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's still a struggle because especially when they use a lot of slangs, it's still difficult for me to comprehend, right?
Yeah.
Now, what happens with that, it's just a very minor example. What happens is that a lot of the immigrants, do not go out and do not feel part of that, right? Because there is a barrier, not of language, but the cultural barrier. So that's third barrier that I've seen and observed. The fourth could be naturally, if I come from India and I come from Western India. So even in India, I come from, very regional space. And I would rather gravitate towards somebody who speaks my language out of 100 people. So I don't really naturally go out and build my network outside of it. And that's another challenge that happens, is that I'm not building that social capital that I need, and I continue to mingle with the same people, with the same culture that I know, so that I'm not even exposed to various aspects of work and culture and society that I think it would be very beneficial for me, because that accelerates the learning that one has to go through, so that you don't make the mistakes that's required. I can end with a funny anecdote that I've heard from many people, that once there was Indian immigrant, and the neighbor asked him to come for a barbecue, and the neighbor said, "Why don't you bring a plate?" That was the instruction, and he actually brought the plate,
Yeah.
but an empty plate, right?
Yeah.
That's what basic cultural difference. So these are some of the elements, if not all, that
Mm.
I find uniquely contributing to that. To the second question around the international students, Jaden, I think international students have peculiar situation. One is that they most of the international students come here for masters.
Mm.
Now there is no gap between their finishing the bachelor's. There might be 6 months gap, and they arrive here to do masters. If you look at the average age of an Australian student studying masters, would go in the mid-30s, whereas
Mm.
international students are starting in their 20s, right? So, but
Yeah.
they are not going to find a job which is compared to a master's degree. They'll still have to rely on the bachelor's degree to be able to find work. And international students have, got their 20 hours of, 40 hours of fortnight work restrictions. So what happens is that they are busy working, managing their life, paying the fees, while the other students, so as if local students, they've got an advantage that they have had the social capital required, they've got the professional
Mm.
network required. So once
They've
they
got social
finish,
support,
they
everything. Yeah.
everything, right? Like for example, my son who is in currently in secondary college, once he finishes the uni, he will not have challenges because of that. I will have enough network to say, you know what, Jaden, you run this cool company. My son is looking for an internship. Would you help him?
Mm.
Jaden would, because Jaden and I have been friends for a long period of time, and
Mm.
that's what international students do not have that, right? So
Yeah.
these are, this sounds very, very simple, but if you think in that context of career, who you know and who knows you makes a hell of a difference.
Definitely. Well, even in B2B sales, usually it comes through friends, and even a lot of the employee or employment stuff happens through referrals. So that's just two direct ways that knowing someone can make you money and get you a job. So that's really interesting. And what you were saying about the culture stuff in the psychology degree that I was studying, if you've got someone that's more similar to you in terms of language and culture and background, and you have another person that's the same race as you, you actually gravitate more towards that person that shares your dialect and your culture. So that's pretty interesting as well, what you were saying. So considering those problems, how can an international student overcome them?
I think one of the things is, I don't know, we interviewed Amir Kutub. He's a fantastic young entrepreneur, and he came here as a student in 2013 or 14, and now he has his own business. And the kind of journey that he had was primarily around networking. He got jobs around networking, but he started to network at a very early stage. So networking plays an exceptionally important role. And networking is just not about, hey Jaden, my name is Naishadh, can you help me get a job?
Mm.
Networking is about getting to know Jaden
Mm.
and say, Jaden, what do you do? I'm interested in the in your startup and how you are helping. Tell me more. That kind of inquisitive and curious approach of being help, of service to somebody
Mm.
will
Yeah.
always pique people's interest. And people say, you know what, yeah, let me talk to you. I'm not out there to ask you for a job. That's one thing. Secondly is that expand your network outside of your usual people that you hang out with,
Mm.
right? Because that's the thing that I think we spoke earlier, is that the more you expand, the more cultural competency you'll have, which will help you to relate to people. If you then come across with somebody from a different culture in interview, you can easily connect with them. You don't
Mm.
find that, oh, I don't know how he or she will react to certain comments.
Mm.
Then the third thing is, I think a lot of the people get an opportunity for internship. If that's part of your school, university, grab that with both the hands, because that is absolutely invaluable.
Yeah,
The
definitely.
experience you will get to sit down with Jaden and see how Jaden works and how he thinks, that will be gold. Then I know exactly how Australian businesses really function and how you can be of service to them. And the fourth could be, really do the work, really engage yourself in the work that you do, in the vocation that you are part of. If you are not going to enjoy that, then that is going to reflect in your networking efforts. That's going to reflect on your resume. That's going to reflect in your interview, because you are not genuinely interested in the
That's true.
work. You are interested in it because it has got a potential of securing a residency, and then securing a citizenship. I'm not at all saying that that's not that's a wrong pathway to have. Having said that, if you focus on, or if you choose something which you kind of enjoy, this business analytics, business administration, or data engineering, whichever, right? I think that is very essential, because that is where you will be more curious. That is where you can ask a lot of questions to people and reach out and network, because then you've got something common to talk about as well. So just some of my suggestions would be.
Yeah, and when people are interested and curious in things, there's actually research that shows that they are more creative, which manifests as more innovative in companies. So, and they get into flow states regularly. So it's like time doesn't exist. You just sort of hone in, you get all that stuff done. It's no effort. So yeah, true that. So are there any ways that international students or migrants can leverage their unique cultural background to their advantage when they're in Australia, in terms of trying to getting them into employment or something?
Yeah, look, it is possible. I'll probably share with you kind of an anecdote. When I used to work in employment services, and we had a lot of people from multicultural background would come, I think one of the things that I look at is the language that they speak, and put it on Seek, and you'll be surprised how many jobs require for somebody to speak Hindi or somebody to speak Urdu, because of the business that they operate in.
Yeah.
So it has got its advantage over there. But the advantage is only if you make the advantage also.
Yeah.
Right? If you think that it's not an advantage, well then then I don't think so that it is going to be of use to you. So that's one of the things. Language, use that as an example. Now a lot of the organizations are also, if you're coming from Asia, Australia is becoming quite close to Asia in terms of trades and everything else. And then you've got to look at which are the trade kind of associations pertaining to your own country. See if you can get a lead into that. Find out who are the members of that, and see, look, can I come and intern with you? And I've got this experience. I've done this kind of, I've got this kind of skill. Is there a possibility for me to do some work experience with your company? I think then you are using that.
Yeah.
Because you've got the language, you've got the culture, but then you also have got an Australian sense of working as well.
Yeah.
These are a couple of ways that you can do that. But that, remember, Jada, this all requires a research. This all requires a persistence, and all require thoughtful approach to those stakeholders. Talking about these things and how you can be useful to them. I'll cite the example of what yesterday's guest on LinkedIn Live said, that he went for an internship interview, and before he went for the interview, he actually presented a report to them.
Yeah.
That this is what my research says. This is what I've already done my research on, and here is what I want to do. Now that actually turned the table, because now the interviewer is thinking, what am I going to ask this person, right? So then the interviews are more about meeting and saying, what else can we do together? And that's pretty important.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because in the interviews, it's all about like trying to figure out how you're going to add value to that organization, and then actions speak louder than words. So you've already added value by doing that stuff. Yeah, that's a really good idea. So I've got another 2 questions for you. So what do you think of the traditional resume? This isn't a loaded question. I know I've got like a resume company, but what do you think of the traditional resume, the pros and cons, and is it going any particular way in the future that you can see?
Look, I think traditional resumes will still have a place. I don't think so that it will be completely replaced by LinkedIn. Obviously, it works complementary in most of the occasions. Sometimes people find people on LinkedIn, but they will still say, "Can you send me your resume or not?" They will still want that career history. They will still want to see, the whole career history, the skills that you've learned and everything else. But I think the way resume structuring is obviously changing. We are seeing more crispier resume. We are seeing resumes which are not so much just shorter, but they want to clearly see the advantage of hiring you. I don't know whether people spend 16 seconds or 20 seconds. I can never tell you that. And there are a lot of research is done on that. I don't necessarily go by those things when I see a resume. What I'm interested to know is, does this resume clearly communicate who this person is and what would I receive if I hire this person or not? Are those value driven statements really there or not? And how do you demonstrate those value driven statements? Is tell what, show them, like show. And I think Australian society, we have done show, what we say, the kids do that, forgot the name, but they have to show them, right? So tell them what you have delivered. Talk about the results. Talk about how you have delivered those results. And that is where I think what employers are really looking for. Secondly, in terms of resumes, one of the things that I think a lot of people miss the mark is the logical sequencing of that as well. And I think that's another trend that we are seeing, is that people have to immediately know the sequence of events that happen. You don't want to open up a thriller novel by first chapter, the murder was murder happened in the second chapter. Oh, suddenly, oh, Mr. John did that. Oh God! And then haven't said, hang on, there's something missing here, right? You want to have a logical sequence, and I think that is another thing that a lot of resumes are, that we are not seeing that as much.
Okay.
Secondly is obviously to we also see a lot of creative stuff also in resumes that are I've seen a lot of graphs and charts and everything else. A lot of people also get really kind of what we say slave of applicant tracking system also, that no, I have to be this way. With applicant tracking system, is only going to look at when you're looking at the advertised job market. If you look at the unadvertised job market, applicant tracking system doesn't make a sense at all. They will not use the applicant tracking system.
I agree with that. Yeah.
They will. Exactly, right? So they would rather see a resume that makes sense rather than an applicant tracking system compliant.
I find it interesting as well, because I've got some friends in HR and they straight out tell me that if they've got resumes that just look really boring and sort of really shit, they just don't even give them any attention. And it's the ones that look good that they're like, oh, sweet, they spend some time on it and they hire them. So if it's going through the human route, it makes sense to have sort of an aesthetically pleasing one. But the ATSs obviously can't work with stuff like that. They're a bit primitive. So yeah, so it's just interesting. So what are your two biggest takeaway career tips for international students and migrants trying to sort of start their career in Australia?
I think one of the things would be to to build your network, really build your be it professional or personal network. Build your network. Don't worry about that yield results to you or not, but the social capital is so critical. It's like I always give this example of a trapeze artist when they perform in a circus. And you know what? One of the things is, I've never been, been an artist, so I can't tell you how they function. But there's always a safety net. They know if they fall down, then they're not going to get hurt, and that's what you will think about your network. If you fall down, are there people who can hold you or not? If there are none, then I think that's what you got to focus on. So that would be one. And second would be, think about what problems you can solve for companies. Like literally think like an entrepreneur, like the way you have started Zygaverse, because you wanted to solve a specific problem around resumes and the boring nature of it, and how can it be more interactive and dynamic and more interesting for employers to see, rather than the two-page CV that single dimensional CV that they see. I think that's very important. So think like an entrepreneur, focus on what problems you can solve, and have that kind of discussion with the employer rather than give me a job. Because the moment you talk about give me a job, people will immediately back off and say no.
Yeah.
But tell me more. Tell me more about what problems you are facing in a business. Or I've done this research and I think this is where I can help you. This is where I can reduce your pain. That kind of conversations will differentiate you, amongst million other people.
Yeah, definitely. And the two things you just said are like really backed by science as well, because that like that safety net for like physical health and stuff, meaningful relationships are protective against like depression and all these physiological disorders that sort of cause people to be unhealthy. So that's true. And the other stuff you were saying was really true as well. So thanks for your time, Naishadh. I appreciate you spending part of your day to chat to us.
Thank you very much, Jaden, for the invitation.
All right. Thanks, man.